Hey everybody, Anthony aka Hawkhammer here with a quick tutorial for how to set up for webcam play for the Transformers TCG. If you're looking to compete in any of our major tournaments, you will need a webcam setup, so here I am to show you how to do it. Now, there are three basic essentials you will need. The first is a space to actually play. You don't necessarily need a playmat, you can't just play on any table or anything like that. I just have a playmat to act as a visual indication for me of kind of where the camera's field of view is. Of course, you also need a camera, and there are two main ways to go about this, either using your phone or using a webcam. The latter is going to be probably the more expensive option because you'll need a dedicated webcam, preferably one that plugs in and is free to be set up wherever, and then you'll want to set it up so it's either pointing at the table. If you were sitting right here, it's pointing this way, so that way your hand doesn't bleed on camera, or pointing straight down like I have. If you're using your phone, what you'll want to do there is most likely create a second Discord account. When you are in a call playing a game, have your main account on your computer, have your second account on your phone, deafen and mute yourself on the phone account, and then turn on your video on your phone account, and again, have that either pointing this way with you right here, or have it pointing straight down to show your play area. Quick note, if you are going to use your phone, what I found works best is one of these gooseneck stands. It works especially well if you are doing the top-down view, but it will also work if you are doing the angled view pointing at the play area. Now, I use my phone personally, but I use the OBS camera app because that's better for me as a content creator. That isn't necessary at all, though, because that does cost 16 bucks, so that's an additional charge. The easier way to go about it if you're going to use your phone is to just create a second Discord account, because then you don't have to get into paying for things. So those are the first two essentials. The third is, of course, cards. You need cards to play the game, and if you don't have professionally printed cards for any of the waves or official cards from Waves 1 through 5's official print runs, you can print off proxies. I will put a card in here now for a video on how to set those up, so that way you can maximize how many cards you're printing off at a time, and how you can actually get the images and all that. But once you have all your cards, you're able to set everything up here as if you were playing a normal game. Couple of etiquette notes now. Be sure you keep as much stuff on camera that you are actively using at a time, especially your battle cards. Do not let these go off camera even slightly for any reason, otherwise people will tend to get sketched out very quickly. Characters you can generally get away with taking off camera if they are KO'd, but generally what I like to do for characters whose mode in the KO area actually matters, like combiner teams, I'll just leave them like slightly in frame like this, so that way my opponent can see what's going on with them. And then stratagems, good practice to keep them in frame. You can technically keep them slightly off to the side if they don't hold counters or anything like that, but general rule of thumb, try to keep everything in frame at all times. Especially your hand, and there's an extra note here, just be aware of where your camera is and position your hand accordingly to make sure that it doesn't bleed to your opponent. Because like most people would hold their hand of cards like this normally, you can clearly see what is in my hand right now, so just be sure you are aware of where your camera is. On the subject of your hand, a couple more things you'll want to take note of. One, if you're not actively holding your hand, you'll want to keep it in frame somewheres. Again, taking cards out of the frame at all, like you saw there briefly, tends to sketch people out very easily. And second, if you're not holding your hand, while this isn't mandatory, a lot of players do appreciate this, put a die on your hand to indicate how many cards you have in hand. So as you can see here, I have 3, so I would put a 3 next to it. Again, not mandatory, but a lot of players really appreciate it, instead of having to constantly ask how many cards you have in hand, since there's no easy way to get a glimpse at how many cards are in your opponent's hand over webcam. In terms of tracking damage and other counters, generally most people will use D6s. I use D10s personally, but just make sure it is something that is visible on camera to represent each character's damage or whatever, and it is clear to your opponent. Do not write damage down off camera. That tends to lead to errors. Do not just remember the damage. That will definitely lead to errors. Most often, you will just want to use dice or like individual counters or something like that if you're not using dice. So that is really everything. Just you need your play area, you need your cards, you need your camera. Be sure everything stays in frame, especially your deck, your discard pile, and your hand. Characters can generally go off camera when they're KO'd, but for certain things like combiners, you may want to keep them slightly in frame so your opponent can track their mode. Stratagems generally want to stay on camera, but there are some exceptions where if you need extra space, you can keep them slightly off camera. And be sure to use dice or counters to keep track of damage and other things. So that's really all you need to know. It's fairly straightforward process, and hopefully you can get your setup ready, and we will see you on the battlefield.